Taewon stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Sovereign's Pride and watched his crew work. Everything moved perfectly. Every officer knew their job. Every system responded exactly as it should. This was how the Galactic Coalition operated. This was power. This was order. He was Valkyrie, one of the galaxy's greatest warrior species, 8 feet tall, covered in scales that could stop most small weapons, strong enough to bend steel with his bare hands. His people had never lost a war. They led the coalition military because they were the best. Everyone knew this. It was simply fact. Taewon looked at the tactical display and frowned. The human liaison officer, Captain Dayun Park, stood nearby. She was reviewing the same data he was. Small, fragile, barely 5.5 feet tall. Her species had joined the coalition 15 years ago and been placed at the bottom of the hierarchy. Tier 7, almost the lowest ranking possible. The humans confused him. They seemed so weak, yet they never showed fear. They watched and listened and took notes on everything. It was unsettling. Captain Park approached him. "Commander, I have reviewed the defensive formation for tomorrow's exercises. I believe there is a weakness in the third quadrant positioning. If I may suggest," Taewon raised a hand to stop her. "Captain Park, these formations have been used successfully for 300 years. I appreciate your interest, but humans lack the combat experience to evaluate coalition military strategy." She nodded once. No argument. No emotion on her face. "Understood, Commander." She returned to her station. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Hyun-soo, walked over. "Why do we even have humans on our ship?" the younger Valkyrie asked quietly. "They contribute nothing. Their technology is outdated. Their combat abilities are pathetic." Taewon shrugged. "Coalition regulations. Every major vessel must have representation from member species. It builds unity, supposedly. Unity with weaklings," Hyun-soo muttered. An alarm cut through the bridge. The communications officer called out, "Commander, priority transmission from Coalition Command. The mining colony on Epsilon 7 has gone silent. All communications lost. No distress signal. They just stopped." Taewon moved to his command chair. "How long since last contact?" 42 minutes. Set course for Epsilon 7, maximum speed. Prepare the crew for possible combat situation." The Sovereign's Pride turned and accelerated. The mining colony was only 2 hours away at full speed. Taewon considered the possibilities. Equipment failure, solar flare interference, pirates maybe, though they rarely attacked coalition territory anymore. He noticed Captain Park studying her console intensely. Private Jiwoo, the young human soldier assigned to bridge operations, stood at attention nearby. Both humans looked worried. That was strange. They usually remained calm about everything. "Captain Park," Taewon called. "Your assessment?" She looked up. "This pattern troubles me, Commander. Complete communication loss with no warning. No distress signal. No debris field detected. In human military history, this type of silence usually means one thing, which is, they were destroyed too quickly to call for help." Hyun-soo laughed. "Captain, Epsilon 7 has 4 defensive platforms and a garrison of coalition soldiers. Nothing in this sector could destroy them in seconds. You are being paranoid." Park said nothing more, but Taewon saw her hands moving across her console, pulling up additional tactical data. 2 hours later, they arrived at Epsilon 7. The sensors showed something immediately. An energy signature, but it made no sense. The readings matched nothing in coalition databases. The signature was powerful, alien, and completely unknown. "All stations battle alert," Taewon ordered. "Raise shields. Charge weapons." The colony came into view, or what was left of it. The defensive platforms were gone. Not damaged, gone, completely destroyed. The buildings on the surface were melted slag. Nothing moved. Nothing transmitted. The colony and its 3,000 inhabitants had been erased. "By the ancients," Hyun-soo whispered. Then the sensors screamed. "Weapons lock. Multiple targets. From the colony's surface, evasive maneuvers." Taewon shouted. The ship lurched. Weapons fire tore through space where they had been seconds before. The weapons were unlike anything Taewon had seen. They moved impossibly fast. They curved around obstacles. They seemed to predict where the Sovereign's Pride would move. "Return fire," Taewon commanded. "Target those positions!" The battlecruiser's massive weapons fired. The shots hit the surface where the enemy fire came from. Explosions bloomed. But the enemy weapons kept firing. They had already moved. More contacts appeared on sensors. Ships. Dozens of ships rising from behind the colony's moon. They were sleek, dark, covered in what looked like organic armor. The energy signatures matched the unknown readings. Identify those vessels, Taewon demanded. No match in database, Commander. Wait. Receiving a transmission. Audio only. They are identifying themselves. A voice filled the bridge. Deep, ancient, full of cruel amusement. We are the Drokath. This galaxy was ours before your species learned to walk. We have returned. Your coalition ends now. The Drokath ships opened fire as one. The Sovereign's Pride's shields flared. Alarm screamed. The shields were failing. Already. Coalition shields could withstand hours of bombardment. These were falling apart in seconds. Taewon gave orders. Standard defensive formation. Concentrate fire on the lead vessels. Protect the shield generators. Every tactic he knew. Every strategy that had worked for centuries. Nothing worked. The Drokath moved like they knew every move before it happened. They split his formations. They hit weak points he didn't know existed. They were playing with them. Around him his crew was panicking. These were Velkari warriors. They had never known defeat. Now they were facing it and they didn't know how to respond. A voice cut through the chaos. Captain Park, calm, cold. Commander, I recommend immediate retreat vector 372. Use the debris field from the colony as cover. Cut main engines and coast. They are tracking our energy output. Taewon looked at her. For the first time in his life, he had no idea what to do. His training was useless. His experience meant nothing. The human was still thinking clearly. Do it, he said. The helmsman followed Park's instructions. The ship turned hard, dove toward the debris field, then cut engines. They drifted silently through the wreckage. The Drokath weapons fire continued, but it was hitting empty space now. The enemy ship slowed, searching. Park spoke again, still calm. Wait 30 seconds. Then restart engines at minimum power and retreat. They will expect us to run at full speed. We stay slow and quiet. They waited. 30 seconds felt like 30 years. Then the engines restarted, barely a whisper of power. The Sovereign's Pride crept away from the killing field. The Drokath ships turned away, apparently deciding their prey had been destroyed. The battlecruiser escaped. Once they were safely away, Taewon looked around his bridge. Half his crew was dead or wounded. His ship was crippled. They had faced the enemy for less than 20 minutes and barely survived. He walked over to Captain Park. She was still at her station, reviewing data, already analyzing what had happened. You saved us, he said quietly. She looked up at him. I did my job, Commander. How did you know what to do? Because humans have always fought enemies stronger than us. We learn to survive by being smarter, not stronger. This enemy fights the way we used to fight. Taewon sat in his damaged command chair and realized something terrible. Everything he believed about strength, about superiority, about his species' dominance had been wrong. And the Drokath were just beginning their assault. The coalition had no idea what was coming. He looked at the small human woman who had just saved hundreds of lives with nothing but her mind and her calm thinking. Maybe humanity's weakness was actually strength. Maybe the coalition had been wrong about everything. The thought terrified him more than the Drokath did. The Sovereign's Pride limped through space toward Coalition Outpost Gamma 9. 3 days of slow travel with damaged engines. 3 days of receiving terrible news from across Coalition space. 3 more colonies had fallen to the Drokath. Each attack followed the same pattern. Complete destruction. No survivors. Coalition military forces wiped out in minutes. The enemy was unstoppable. Taewon sat in his quarters, reading reports. Every coalition response had failed. The Velkari sent their best battle groups. Destroyed. The Thorians sent their massive dreadnoughts. Destroyed. Every species, every weapon, every tactic from 3 centuries of military dominance meant nothing against the Drokath. A knock on his door. Enter. Captain Park walked in. She carried a data tablet. Commander, I have been analyzing the Drokath attack patterns. I believe I have found something important. Taewon gestured to a chair. Park sat and activated the tablet. Images appeared in the air between them. Ship movements. Weapon patterns. Attack strategies. The Drokath fight like humans used to fight, Park said. Not modern humans. Ancient humans. Before we had advanced weapons. Before we had technology. I do not understand. Park highlighted parts of the tactical display. Look at this. The Drokath use deception. They make you think they are in one place, then attack from another. They study how you fight, then use your own tactics against you. They make you angry and scared so you make mistakes. This is psychological warfare. The Coalition knows psychological warfare, Taewon said. No, Commander. Intimidation. That is different. Humans spent thousands of years fighting on Earth. Constant war. We were never the strongest species on our planet. We had to learn to win through thinking, through adaptation, through using the enemy's strength against them. The Drokath do the same thing. Taewon studied the data. Park was right. The Drokath attacked from unexpected angles. They created confusion. They turned coalition formations into traps against themselves. You think humans can fight them, he said slowly. I think humans understand how to fight them. We have the knowledge, but we need the coalition to listen. Taewon stood. I will call a meeting with my senior officers. You will present this. 2 hours later, the meeting began. Lieutenant Yunsu attended, still recovering from his wounds. The other officers filled the briefing room, all Valkyrie, all skeptical. Captain Park stood at the front and began her presentation. She showed attack patterns, explained tactics, demonstrated how human historical warfare matched Drokath strategies. Yunsu interrupted. Captain Park, with respect, you are talking about primitive warfare. Spears and arrows. We fight in space with advanced weapons. This is not relevant. Park turned to him. Lieutenant, the weapons change. The principles do not. Humans learned to win when we were weaker. The coalition has always been stronger. You never learned these lessons because you never needed to. So humans are better warriors than Valkyrie? Hyunsu's voice was cold. No, but humans are better survivors. That is what you need right now. The room erupted in angry voices. Taewon let it continue for a moment, then raised his hand for silence. Captain Park saved this ship. She saved our lives. Her tactics worked when ours failed. We will listen. The meeting continued for 3 hours. Park explained strategies that seemed wrong to Valkyrie thinking. Retreating to draw the enemy into traps, using false signals to confuse sensors, fighting from positions that appeared weak but were actually strong. Everything went against coalition military doctrine. When they reached Outpost Gamma 9, an emergency transmission arrived. Drokath forces were approaching. A large fleet. They would arrive in 6 hours. Coalition Command ordered all available ships to defend the outpost. The Sovereign's pride was damaged, but they were the closest vessel. They had to fight. Taewon stood on his bridge and made a decision that could end his career. Captain Park, you will have tactical command of this vessel during the battle. The bridge went silent. Every Valkyrie officer stared at him. Hyunsu stepped forward. Commander, I must protest. This is against regulations. A Tier 7 species cannot command a coalition battlecruiser. File your protest with command, Taewon said. But during this battle, Captain Park commands. That is my order. Park looked uncomfortable. Commander, You understand this enemy. We do not. Lives depend on this. Will you do it? Park nodded once. Yes, Commander. 6 hours later, the Drokath arrived. 30 ships against the 15 coalition vessels defending the outpost. The coalition fleet formed standard defensive positions, strong formations that had protected coalition space for centuries. The Drokath tore through them like paper. Ships exploded. Shields failed. Within minutes, half the coalition fleet was gone. The Sovereign's pride held position with the others following Park's orders. All stations, break formation, Park ordered. Full power to engines. Transmit distress signal on all frequencies. Make it look like panic. The crew hesitated. Taewon spoke. You heard the captain. Execute. The Sovereign's pride spun away from the formation. The distress signal screamed across space. To the Drokath, it must have looked like another coalition ship running in terror. Private Jiwoo, Park called. The young human jumped to attention. Take control of the mining drones around the outpost. Program them to emit warship energy signatures. I need the Drokath to think there are more ships than there are. Yes, Captain. Jiwoo ran to a terminal and began working. Park continued giving orders. Helm, take us through that debris field. Slow down to 50% speed. Sensors broadcast false targeting data on Drokath frequencies. Make them think we have weapons we do not have. The ship dove into the wreckage of destroyed Coalition vessels. Drokath ships followed, but now the human tactics were working. The Drokath could not tell which sensor contacts were real ships and which were Jiwoo's fake signals. Their precise targeting began hitting empty space. Fire weapons, Park ordered. 3 shots at the lead Drokath ship. Then immediately go silent and change position. The Sovereign's Pride fired. The shots hit. Then the ship went dark and coasted behind a large piece of debris. Drokath return fire hit where they had been, not where they were. Taewon watched Park work. She stayed completely calm. Every order was clear and direct. She turned their damaged ship into a weapon through pure thinking. The battle continued for 2 hours. The Sovereign's Pride could not destroy the Drokath fleet, but they confused them. They delayed them. They bought time for the civilian transports to evacuate the outpost. Finally, Coalition reinforcements arrived. Fresh ships with crews that had been trained in human tactics. Together, they drove the Drokath back. When the battle ended, Taewon stood and looked around his bridge. They had survived again, against impossible odds, because of a small human woman who understood war better than any Velkari warrior. Lieutenant Hyun-soo approached him. The young officer's scales were scorched from fire damage. During the battle, Private Jiwoo had dragged him from a burning station to safety. "Commander," Hyun-soo said quietly. "I was wrong about the humans. So was I," Taewon replied. A transmission arrived from Coalition Command. They had reviewed the battle footage. Most of the senior officers dismissed the Sovereign's Pride's survival as luck. But a few saw what Taewon saw. Humanity might be the key to winning this war. Orders came through. Taewon was to travel to Earth. He would meet with human military leadership. The Coalition needed to understand what humans knew about warfare, about survival, about fighting enemies stronger than themselves. That night, Taewon found Captain Park in the ship's observation deck. She stood looking out at the stars. "I have been ordered to Earth," he said. Park nodded. "I know, I am coming with you. What will I find there?" She was quiet for a long moment. "The truth about humanity. We are not what the Coalition thinks we are. We never were. Are you saying humans have been hiding something?" "I am saying that humans learned long ago to never show all their strength. We joined the Coalition as the weak species because that is what you needed to see. But we were preparing. Always preparing. For the day when being weak would not be enough." Taewon felt a chill run down his spine. "You knew something like the Drokath would come. We knew someone would come. The galaxy is too big for there not to be threats. The Coalition grew comfortable in its strength. Humans never had that luxury. We stayed ready. Should I be afraid of what I will find on Earth?" Park looked at him. Her expression was unreadable. "Yes, Commander. You should be very afraid, but not because we are your enemy, because you are about to learn what humans are truly capable of when we stop pretending to be weak." Taewon looked out at the stars and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had thought the Drokath were the greatest threat the Coalition faced. But maybe he was wrong. Maybe humanity was something far more dangerous, and he was flying straight toward their homeworld. Earth appeared in the viewport. Blue and green and white. Beautiful. Peaceful. Nothing about it suggested military power. Taewon had read the reports. A moderate planet. Average resources. No special strategic value. The Coalition had dismissed Earth as unimportant. He was about to learn how wrong those reports were. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere. Not to a surface spaceport. Down, down, down into the planet's crust. They landed in an underground facility so massive that Taewon could not see the walls in some directions. "Welcome to Strategic Command Headquarters," Captain Park said. A human general waited for them. General Sung-ho, old, scarred, with cybernetic enhancements visible on his arms and face. He did not smile. "Did not offer pleasantries, Commander Taewon. You are here because the Coalition is losing. You need what we know. Follow me." They walked through corridors carved into solid rock. Thousands of humans worked at stations. Taewon saw weapons he did not recognize, ships that looked nothing like the outdated vessels humans flew in Coalition space. Technology that seemed more advanced than anything the Velkari possessed. "I do not understand," Taewon said. "The ships we see in Coalition space. Your equipment, Everything is old, outdated. General Sung-ho stopped and turned. Those ships are what we wanted you to see. Ceremonial vessels for parades and meetings. Our real military is down here. Has been since we joined the coalition. But why hide it? The general smiled. It was not a friendly expression, because humans learned something long before we reached the stars. Never show your real strength until you must. When we joined the coalition, we were the weakest species. If we had shown our true capability, we would have been a threat. The coalition would have tried to control us, maybe destroy us, so we appeared weak and harmless. You deceived the entire coalition. We survived. That is what matters. They entered a massive training facility. Taewon watched human soldiers practice combat. It was nothing like Valkyrie training. No honor duels, no displays of strength. Just brutal, efficient techniques designed to kill enemies faster and stronger than themselves. A human officer approached. Colonel Bo-ra, small, quiet, with eyes that missed nothing. Commander Taewon. General Seung-ho asked me to explain human combat philosophy. She led him to an observation platform overlooking the training floor. What do you see? Taewon watched. Soldiers training. Look closer. What are they training for? He studied the exercises. Every technique assumed the enemy was bigger, stronger, better armed. Every strategy focused on survival first, victory second. They trained to fight enemies like me. Taewon said slowly. Like you. Like the Thorians. Like every species in the coalition, we are prey pretending to be predators. Every human instinct tells us we are outmatched. So we learn to make that our advantage. Fear makes you careful. Careful keeps you alive. The coalition does not fear. Colonel Bo-ra looked at him. No, and that is why you are losing. General Sung-ho joined them. We have arranged a demonstration. Your best warriors against ours. Non-lethal weapons. Standard combat scenario. Are you interested? Taewon felt his pride stir. Yes. An hour later, 5 Valkyrie elite warriors entered the training area. Taewon had chosen them carefully. The best soldiers on his ship. Each one could fight a dozen enemies and win. They carried training weapons that delivered painful but non-lethal shocks. 5 human soldiers entered from the opposite side. They looked small, fragile. Sergeant Yoonji led them. She was barely 5 feet tall. The Valkyrie warriors smiled. This would be easy. The simulation began. The Valkyrie advanced in standard formation, strong, disciplined, confident. The humans scattered. They used cover. They moved unpredictably. One human made noise to draw attention while another attacked from behind. They threw objects to confuse sensors. They retreated when pushed, only to counterattack from unexpected angles. 4 minutes. That was how long it took. 4 minutes and all 5 Valkyrie warriors were down. The humans stood over them, barely breathing hard. Taewon could not believe it. These were elite warriors. The best of the best. They had lost to enemies half their size. Sergeant Yoonji approached him afterward. No disrespect to your warriors, Commander. They are strong and brave, but they were thinking about winning. We were thinking about surviving. That is the difference. That evening, General Seung-ho showed Taewon the real reason he had been brought to Earth. They entered a secure conference room deep in the facility. Holograms appeared. Star maps, enemy positions. Intelligence data. The Drokath, Seung-ho said. We have been tracking them for 18 months. Since before the Coalition detected them. How? Because we were looking. The Coalition assumed it was the dominant power in the galaxy. We knew better. Humanity spent its entire history learning one lesson. Someone stronger is always coming. Always. So we watched. We prepared. We found evidence of the Drokath's return before they attacked. Taewon studied the data. You knew they would attack. We knew someone would attack. The Drokath, some other ancient enemy, a new threat. It did not matter who. What mattered was being ready. Why did you not warn the Coalition? Would they have listened? A Tier 7 species warning the mighty Coalition about threats they could not detect. We would have been dismissed, laughed at. So we waited. We let the Coalition learn the hard way that strength is not enough. The general pulled up more data. The Coalition cannot defeat the Drokath. Your military philosophy is incompatible with fighting an enemy like this, but we can help. We have the knowledge, the weapons, the tactics, but we need something in return. What do you want? Authority. We will train coalition forces, share our technology, lead the defense against the Drokath. But we need the coalition to follow our command. Your leaders will not like this. They will resist. You must convince them. Taewon was silent for a long moment. Everything he knew about power and hierarchy was being challenged. The coalition had always led because they were the strongest. Now humans wanted to lead because they were the smartest. If I do this, he said slowly, if I tell the coalition to follow human command, I will be called a traitor. My career will end. Perhaps my life. Yes, Shungho said. You will sacrifice everything. But billions will live, including your own people. Is that not worth the price? That night, Taewon walked through Earth's underground city. He saw human families, children playing, people living their lives. They looked so normal, so peaceful. But now he understood the truth. These peaceful people were descended from warriors who had fought for survival for thousands of years. They had learned to hide their fangs behind smiles. Captain Park found him looking out at the city. Have you made your decision? You knew this would happen, Taewon said. When you saved my ship. When you showed me how to fight. You were preparing me for this moment. Yes. Why me? Because you were willing to listen. Because you put survival above pride. Because you are the kind of leader the coalition needs right now. Taewon looked at her. This small human who had changed everything. I'm afraid, Park smiled. Good, fear means you understand what is at stake. Now use that fear. Let it make you stronger. 3 days later, Taewon stood before the Coalition Council, the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. He had prepared his speech carefully. He knew it would not be enough. They would resist. They would refuse, but he had to try. Honored Council, he began. I have returned from Earth. I have seen what humanity is capable of. I have learned truths that will be difficult to accept. But the survival of the coalition depends on accepting them. He showed them footage, the training exercises, the hidden facilities, the advanced weapons. The council members watched in growing shock and anger. Humanity deceived us, one counselor said. They pretended to be weak while building a secret military. They prepared, Taewon replied. Which is what we should have done. The Drokath are destroying us because we believed our own propaganda. We thought we were unbeatable. Humans knew better. They never stopped preparing for the next threat. You want us to give command to humans? Another counselor's voice was full of disbelief. I want us to survive. Humanity offers to train our forces, share their knowledge, lead the defense, but only if we trust them. Only if we stop thinking of them as weak and start seeing them as they truly are. Survivors who understand warfare better than we ever will. The debate raged for hours. Many counselors refused. But the Drokath continued their advance. More colonies fell. More ships were destroyed. The coalition was running out of time and options. Finally, reluctantly, the vote passed. Human advisors would be integrated into coalition military command. Training protocols would be implemented. It was not complete authority, but it was a start. Taewon left the council chambers exhausted. Colonel Bora and a team of human officers waited outside. They would return to coalition space and begin the work of teaching thousands of soldiers to fight in ways they had never imagined. This will not be easy, Bora said. Your people will resist. They will hate us for challenging their traditions. I know, Taewon replied. But they will learn, or we will all die. Those are the only options now. As they boarded the transport back to coalition space, Taewon looked back at Earth one last time. A peaceful planet hiding warriors who had learned to survive by being smarter, not stronger. He finally understood what real strength meant. Coalition Central Command orbited the Velkari homeworld. The massive station coordinated military operations across 47 star systems. It had stood for 300 years as a symbol of coalition power. Now it struggled to hold back an enemy that grew stronger every day. Colonel Bora arrived with her team of human instructors. Sergeant Yoonji, Lieutenant Jae-sung, and 20 others. They came to teach the coalition how to fight. The reception was cold. Taewon watched the first training session from an observation deck. Below, 200 coalition soldiers stood in formation. Velkari, Thorian, Zendari, and a dozen other species. All of them looked angry at being there. Colonel Bora stood before them. She looked tiny compared to the massive alien warriors. She did not seem to care. "Today you will learn to retreat," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. A Velkari warrior stepped forward. "Humans teach cowardice now. We do not run from battle." "You will run," Bora replied, "or you will die. The Drokath want you to stand and fight. They want you to be brave and honorable. Because brave and honorable corpses are still corpses. You will learn to retreat strategically. You will learn to make the enemy chase you into traps. You will learn to survive." "This is disgraceful," another voice called out. Sergeant Yunji stepped forward. "Is losing disgraceful? Is dying disgraceful? Because that is what you have been doing. The Drokath have destroyed 7 star systems, killed millions. Your honor did not stop them. Your bravery did not stop them. Maybe it is time to try something else." The training continued despite the anger. Bora taught them to use fear as a weapon, to confuse the enemy with false signals, to abandon positions deliberately to lure attackers into kill zones. Everything went against coalition military tradition. Lieutenant Hyun-soo attended the sessions. His wounds from Epsilon 7 had healed, but he still walked with a slight limp. He watched the human instructors carefully. One day, Hyun-soo approached Lieutenant Jae-sung during a break. The human was reviewing tactical simulations. "These strategies," Hyun-soo said, "they have no honor." Jae-sung looked up. "Honor is for ceremonies and medals. War is for survival. The Drokath do not care about your honor. They only care about killing you efficiently. But how do you live with yourselves? Fighting without pride or dignity? We live. That is the point. Humans spent thousands of years fighting on Earth. We learned that dead warriors with honor are still dead. Living warriors without honor can protect their families. Which would you choose?" Hyun-soo had no answer. Weeks passed. The training showed results. Ships that completed human tactical courses performed better in simulations. But resistance continued. Many coalition officers refused to implement the new strategies. Some species threatened to leave the coalition rather than accept human leadership. Then Commander Draven made his stand. A famous Velkari general, decorated veteran of 100 battles, he called the human program a disgrace. He gave speeches, gathered supporters, demanded the council end this foolishness and return to traditional coalition tactics. Colonel Bora responded by challenging him to a war game simulation. 2 fleets, same size, same weapons. Draven would use coalition tactics. Bora would use human tactics. The winner would prove which approach was superior. Draven accepted immediately. He was confident. He had commanded fleets for 40 years. This small human woman would learn respect. The simulation began. Thousands watched, including the entire coalition council. Draven commanded a fleet of 30 ships. Strong formation, disciplined movements, classic coalition power. Bora commanded an identical fleet, but her ships scattered. They moved unpredictably. They transmitted false data. They used debris fields and asteroid belts for cover. Draven ordered an encirclement. Standard tactic. Surround the enemy and crush them with superior firepower. His fleet moved into position. Bora's fleet retreated. It looked like panic. Draven's forces pursued eagerly. They were winning. Then the trap sprang. The retreating ships had been laying mines, creating false sensor signatures, drawing Draven's forces into a kill zone made from abandoned cargo containers that Bora had secretly armed. Draven's tight formation became a death trap. 6 hours later, the simulation ended. Draven's fleet was destroyed. Bora's fleet had taken minimal losses. The human woman had dismantled a legendary coalition general's tactics with an undermanned, supposedly panicking force. The observation deck was silent. Draven stood staring at the displays. His face showed shock and something else. Understanding. The Coalition Council issued new orders. All military personnel would complete human tactical training. No exceptions. The resistance collapsed. When even famous generals could not defeat human strategies, pride had to give way to survival. But the Drokath were not waiting. They had conquered 7 systems and were preparing for their largest attack yet. Intelligence reports showed a massive force gathering. Their target, Velkara itself. The coalition homeworld. Coalition forces scrambled to defend the capital. Every available ship moved into position. Taewon commanded a battle group that included ships from a dozen species. Many had completed human training. Many had not. The Drokath arrived in overwhelming numbers. 50 capital ships, hundreds of fighters. They came at Velkara like an unstoppable wave. The Coalition fleet formed defensive positions around the planet. Traditional formations. Strong. Disciplined. The untrained ships did what they had always done. The Drokath tore through them in minutes. Taiwan watched ships explode around him. The same pattern as Epsilon 7. Coalition power meant nothing against Drokath precision. They were losing again. All ships that completed tactical training, Taiwan broadcast on emergency frequencies. Form on my position. Everyone else maintain current positions and provide covering fire. About a quarter of the fleet responded. Maybe 40 ships. They broke formation and gathered around the Sovereign's Pride. Captain Park stood at the tactical station. Captain Park, Taiwan said. You have tactical command of all ships in this group. Park nodded once. Then her orders began flowing. Fast, precise. All ships activate emergency beacons. Full distress signals. Make it look like we are panicking and retreating. On Velkara's surface, Sergeant Yunji led a ground team. They set up fake weapon installations, broadcast false military communications, created the illusion of more defenders than actually existed. Private Jiwoo worked at her station on the Sovereign's Pride. She coordinated with the ground teams, making sure every fake signal matched real military patterns. The Drokath had to believe it all. Park's battle groups scattered like they were running in terror. The distress signals screamed across all frequencies. To the Drokath, it looked like the coalition was breaking completely. The Drokath took the bait. They pressed their attack aggressively. Their ships pushed deep into the defensive perimeter, chasing what they thought were fleeing coalition forces. That was when the trap closed. The retreating ships had been laying mines. The orbital stations that appeared abandoned were actually armed and waiting. The planetary defense platforms had been powered down to seem destroyed, but they were fully functional. Everything activated at once. The Drokath found themselves surrounded by weapons fire from every direction. Their tight attack formation became a killing zone. For the first time since their return, the Drokath took heavy casualties. They did not retreat. That was not in their nature. But they hesitated, paused, reassessed. That moment was enough. Coalition reinforcements arrived. More ships that had completed human training. They followed Park's tactical guidance, coordinating attacks that confused and divided the Drokath forces. The battle raged for 6 hours. Thousands died on both sides, but slowly, impossibly, the coalition began winning. The Drokath were being beaten by enemies they had dismissed as weak and disorganized. Finally, the Drokath withdrew. They left behind 20 destroyed ships. They had suffered real losses for the first time. Velkara was saved. In the aftermath, Taiwan walked through the damaged corridors of his ship. Lieutenant Hyun-soo found him there. The younger officer's armor was scorched. His scales showed burn marks. I ordered a retreat during the battle, Hyun-soo said quietly. My ship was damaged. The enemy was surrounding us, so I retreated. I drew them into a debris field where my weapons had better advantage. And we survived. You followed your training. A month ago, I would have called it cowardice. I would have stood my ground and died with honor. But today I lived. My crew lived. And we killed 3 Drokath ships because we were smart instead of brave. Taiwan put a hand on the young officer's shoulder. You learned. That is what matters. The Coalition Council met in emergency session. The Battle of Velkara had changed everything. Human tactics worked. Human leadership worked. The species that everyone had dismissed as weak had just saved the Coalition capital. New orders went out. Human officers would be assigned to every major Coalition vessel. Human tactical doctrine would become standard across all forces. The military academies would be restructured to teach survival over glory. Species that had threatened to leave the Coalition now competed to integrate human trainers into their forces. The attitude had completely changed. Humanity was no longer seen as weak. They were seen as the key to survival. That evening, Taiwan found Captain Park on the observation deck. She stood looking at Velkara. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Velkara. The Coalition military looked completely different now. Human officers served on every major warship. Coalition soldiers trained in tactics that would have seemed impossible before. The hierarchy based on strength had been replaced by one based on ability. The Coalition had reclaimed 3 of the 7 occupied systems, but the fighting was brutal. The Drokath were learning too. Their initial advantage was gone. Now it was a real war, and both sides were paying the price. Taewan stood in a strategy room on Coalition Central Command. Holographic displays showed the current war situation. General Seung-ho was present, along with Colonel Bora and the Coalition's top military leaders. "We have found their command center," Seung-ho said. He highlighted a location in the Theta sector. "This nexus coordinates all Drokath military operations. Every major attack is planned here. Every fleet movement originates from this location. Can we destroy it?" Lisa Velkari Admiral asked. "A direct assault would cost thousands of ships and hundreds of thousands of lives," Colonel Bora replied. "The Nexus defenses are too strong for conventional attack. But there is another way," she explained the plan. "A small strike team would infiltrate the Nexus while the main fleet launched a massive distraction attack." It was dangerous, almost suicidal, but it was the only option that had a chance of success. "I will lead the strike team," Bora said. "I volunteer to join," Lieutenant Hyun-soo said immediately. He was fully healed now, stronger than ever, but changed. He thought differently, fought differently. Others volunteered. Sergeant Yoon-ji, Lieutenant Jae-sung, Private Ji-woo, several Velkari Special Operations soldiers who had trained under human instructors. The team was formed. 8 members, 4 human, 4 coalition species. "I will command the fleet assault," Taewan said. "Captain Park will coordinate tactical support from the Sovereign's Pride." The plan was approved. Operation Endgame would launch in 3 days. Those 3 days passed too quickly. The strike team prepared. They studied the Nexus layout, memorized escape routes, practiced coordination until they moved as one unit. The night before the operation, Taewan found himself in the ship's mess hall. Private Ji-woo sat alone reviewing data on a tablet. She looked up when he approached. "Commander, can I help you?" "I wanted to thank you," Taewan said, "for saving Lieutenant Hyun-soo twice." Ji-woo looked confused. "I was just doing my job, sir." "That is what makes you remarkable. You treat extreme courage as routine duty." The Coalition had forgotten how to do that. The young woman shrugged. "Humans learn early that survival is not about being brave. It is about doing what needs to be done." Someone had to pull the lieutenant to safety. "I was there, so I did it." "You're afraid for tomorrow," Taewan said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir." "Very afraid, but you will go anyway." "Yes, sir." "Because that is the job," Taewan nodded slowly. He finally understood. This was what humans meant by bravery, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Operation Endgame began at dawn. The Coalition fleet entered Theta Sector. 300 ships, the largest military force the Coalition had assembled since the war began. The Drokath responded immediately. Their forces rose to meet the threat. The battle was massive and terrible. Ships burned. Weapons fire lit up space like a second sun. Thousands died in the first minutes, but it was working. The Drokath committed their reserves. They believed this was the Coalition's final desperate assault. While the fleet fought and died, the strike team approached the Nexus in a captured Drokath transport. They moved slowly, carefully, using code stolen over months of intelligence work. They docked with the Nexus and entered. The corridors were dark and filled with strange technology. Colonel Bora led them forward. Every step was calculated. Every movement precise. They encountered Drokath guards. The fighting was brutal and close. Sergeant Yoon-ji moved like water, her small size an advantage in the tight spaces. The Velkari soldiers used their strength alongside human precision. They fought as one team. Lieutenant Hyun-soo took point. His massive frame absorbed weapons fire meant for others. When a Drokath ambush surrounded them, he did not hesitate. He charged forward, drawing fire while the humans flanked and eliminated the threat. A blast caught him. Hyun-soo went down. Ji-woo was there instantly, dragging him behind cover while returning fire with her other hand. "Leave me," Hyun-soo said. Blood ran from his wounds. "Complete the mission." "Not happening," Ji-woo replied. She sealed his wounds with emergency foam and hauled him forward. The team adapted. They moved faster, covered each other better. They reached the Nexus core. Lieutenant Jae-sung began setting demolition charges while Bora and Yoon-ji held the perimeter. The Drokath realized too late what was happening. Enemy forces converged on their position. "Charges are set," Jae-sung called. But there is a problem. The security systems prevent remote detonation. Someone needs to stay and trigger them manually. Silence fell. Everyone understood what that meant. Someone had to die. Lieutenant Hyun-soo pulled himself to his feet. His wounds were severe. He would not survive the journey back anyway. He understood this. Accepted it. I will do it, he said. Lieutenant, Colonel Bo-ra began. I finally understand, Hyun-soo said. He looked at each team member. Courage is not about glory. It is about sacrifice. About doing what must be done. Humans taught me this. Now let me prove I learned the lesson. Ji-woo stepped forward. Tears ran down her face. Sir, you saved my life twice, Private. Now I save all of yours. Go, that is an order. They left. Every step felt like betrayal. But Hyun-soo was right. His wounds were too severe, and someone had to trigger the explosion. Hyun-soo waited until they were clear. Then he triggered the charges. The Nexus core exploded in a cascade of energy. The blast tore through the Drokath command structure. Across Theta Sector, enemy forces lost coordination. Aboard the Sovereign's Pride, Captain Park watched her sensors. The Drokath formation was dissolving. They were fighting as individuals now, not as a unified force. Commander Tae-won, she transmitted. All units press the attack. End this now. The coalition fleet surged forward. Ships that had learned human tactics exploited every weakness. The battle was still fierce, still costly. But slowly the Drokath began to break. Hours later it was over. The surviving Drokath vessels retreated into deep space. They were not destroyed. They would rebuild, but for now the threat was ended. The coalition held. 3 weeks later, a memorial service was held on Velkara. Thousands had died in the final battle. Lieutenant Hyun-soo's name was among them. But his memorial was different. Human and Velkari soldiers stood together, shoulder to shoulder. Equals Private Ji-woo received a commendation from the Coalition Council. She accepted it quietly, uncomfortable with the attention. When asked about her heroism, she gave the same answer she always gave. I was just doing my job. The coalition military was permanently restructured. The old hierarchy was gone. Humans served in leadership positions across the fleet. More importantly, the attitude had changed completely. Species that once mocked humanity now requested human officers for their crews. The coalition had learned its lesson. Tae-won was promoted to Fleet Admiral. His first act was to ensure human tactical doctrine became standard in all coalition military academies. Future generations would learn what he had learned the hard way. Strength comes in many forms. Months passed. The coalition rebuilt. The war had changed everything. The galaxy would never be the same. Tae-won stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Sovereign's Pride. It now served as flagship of the coalition defense fleet. Captain Park stood at her station. Not as a liaison, as the ship's tactical officer, an equal. They were reviewing reports from the outer sectors, scattered Drokath movements, probing attacks, testing defenses. They will return, Park said. Eventually. In force. I know, Tae-won replied. But this time we will be ready. Because your people learned to adapt. Because humans taught us what we had forgotten. That survival is not about being the strongest. It is about being willing to change. To sacrifice. To trust the person next to you regardless of what species they are. Park nodded. Lieutenant Hyun-soo understood that in the end. He did. He learned what real courage means. Not fearlessness, but doing what must be done despite the fear. They stood in comfortable silence. The bridge bustled around them. Human and alien crew members worked side by side. The integration was complete, natural, right. Tae-won thought about his journey. From arrogant warrior to humble leader. From dismissing humans as weak to recognizing them as the coalition's salvation. It seemed impossible that one species could change everything. But they had. I thought I knew what strength was, he said quietly. I thought I understood courage. Then I stood shoulder to shoulder with humans. And I learned I knew nothing. Park looked at him. What did you learn? That real bravery meant nothing until we were ready to die for something greater than ourselves. That survival is not about overwhelming force. It is about adaptation. About thinking. About trusting your comrades to do their part while you do yours. The Drokath taught the coalition that lesson, Park said. They showed you that strength alone is not enough. And humans taught us how to win anyway. By being smarter, more flexible, more willing to do whatever survival requires.